I still recall the weight of that December evening as if it were pressed into the grain of my memory like frost into a windowpane. It was Christmas Eve in New York. The kind of night when the city itself seemed dressed for a party. Storefronts glittered with garlands and lights. Taxis honked impatient carols. And snow, soft as ash, floated between high-rise towers. Inside the penthouse, I had done everything to set the scene. Candles flickered on the dining table, their glow softened by crystal holders I had polished myself. The tree in the corner stood tall and confident, trimmed with ornaments collected through the years. The meal, a mixture of roasted turkey, glazed ham, and casseroles, had taken 2 days of preparation. Every chair was set, every napkin folded just so. I thought I had given my family a gift, a holiday without worry, without the constant reminder of overdue bills. For 6 months I had carried this household utilities, groceries, even my mother's so-called medical appointments. My name was on the insurance card, the internet account, the power bill. My paycheck covered the little things that became big things when ignored. I believed, perhaps foolishly, that my effort was a quiet form of love. We were halfway through the meal when the air changed. My fork was suspended above sweet potato casserole when Gregory, my stepfather, cleared his throat. His glass of wine caught the light as he raised it, but his words were anything but festive. "You," he said, pointing his fork at me with the casual cruelty of someone who knows he holds the floor. "You've been nothing but a leech. After tonight, you're finished here. This is not your home." The words landed sharper than the blade he used to carve the turkey. For a moment, the room held its breath. The laughter of cousins, the clink of glassware, the faint hum of Bing Crosby all gone, replaced by silence so complete, I could hear the faint ticking of the antique wall clock I had paid to repair just a month earlier. I looked at my mother, Lydia, searching for any sign of dissent. She lowered her eyes, pushing green beans around her plate, as if they held the secrets of the universe. My younger sister, Lucy, just 16, froze with her glass halfway to her lips, her wide eyes glinting with the reflection of the tree lights. I thought of the morning just past. How I had basted the turkey while others watched football. How I had baked pies and mashed potatoes, set the table and scrubbed the silverware. Only 20 minutes earlier, I had shared the news of a promotion at work, a milestone I believed would make them proud. And now, with the steam from that meal still rising between us, I was told I was unwelcome. The irony was brutal. The very lights above us, powered by an account in my name, the running water in everyone's glasses, billed directly to me, the roast on the table, bought with my credit card, even the insurance statement that had covered Lydia's doctor visit the week prior mine. Yet somehow, in Gregory's eyes, I was a parasite. 3 months earlier, when Lydia lost her job at an accounting firm, I had stepped in without hesitation. Bills multiplied like weeds, and Gregory's part-time showroom job barely touched the mortgage. So I took on the weight: electricity, groceries, car insurance, co-pays. Every month, the burden grew heavier. Every month, Gregory seemed to shrink further, like a man watching sand slip through his hourglass. I remembered overhearing him once, talking to a neighbor through the open window. "She acts like she owns the place now," he had muttered. Only later did I realize the she was me. And now, here he was, pronouncing my exile with a smugness that begged for resistance. My hands trembled, not with fear but with the kind of clarity that comes when the veil is finally torn. I set down my fork, folded my napkin carefully, and looked him square in the eyes. "I understand perfectly," I said. The words were calm, measured, but they carried more weight than any protest could have. Gregory blinked, surprised by my composure. The silence thickened until Lydia spoke, not to defend me, but to secure her own comfort. "You'll still cover the insurance this month, won't you? I have an appointment Tuesday." And there it was, the full picture. I was not a son or a stepson or even a member of the household. I was a wallet with legs, a signature on the bottom of checks. The irony burned hotter than any fire in the hearth. I gathered my plate, along with Lucy's empty glass, and carried them into the kitchen. Of course. Mother, I said. I'll take care of it before I go. At the sink, the plate clinked against porcelain as I rinsed it. Through the window, I could see my car parked in the driveway, the only thing I owned outright. That car would be my escape. My last tether to independence. Lucy followed me quietly, setting her plate beside mine. She did not meet my eyes, but as she placed it down, her fingers brushed my wrist for the briefest moment, a silent gesture of solidarity in a house where silence was survival. That night, while the city outside hummed with carols and laughter, I lay awake in my room, folding sweaters into a suitcase. My mind replayed Gregory's voice, each word an echo I could not shut out. I had been packing for hours, each motion mechanical. Still, my thoughts churned like a river in flood. At the bottom of my desk drawer, beneath a pile of bills, I found a stack of envelopes addressed to Gregory. Bank statements. Strange, I had not seen paper statements for months. I pulled them out, one by one, and with each envelope, my heart sank further. There it was, an account I had never known existed. Balances growing each month, while my own savings bled away. And tucked alongside them, a glossy brochure for a new wake boat. His notes scrawled in the margins. Down payment, $5,500. Delivery after Christmas. So while I had been draining myself to keep this household afloat, he had been saving for leisure, plotting for luxury. And worse, his notes revealed intent. Wait until after bills are paid. Then cut ties. That knowledge sat on my chest like stone. My departure was not a rash decision. Not a misunderstanding. It was premeditated. Planned with the cold precision of someone trading a tool they no longer needed. As the clock ticked past midnight, a soft knock came at the door. Lucy's face peeked in, pale and worried. "You're really leaving," she whispered. I looked at the evidence scattered across my bed, the bank statements, the boat brochure, the receipts of 1,000 sacrifices. I nodded. "I don't have much choice." Her voice dropped. "Mom said they need your room for storage. For when the boat comes." The cruelty of it was almost laughable. I pressed the papers into a neat pile, slid them into my bag, and sat on the edge of the bed. For the first time in months, I felt something shift inside me. This wasn't just about leaving a home. It was about reclaiming a life. The night after that Christmas dinner, I could not sleep. My suitcase was packed and propped against the wall like a silent witness. Yet my mind would not rest. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Gregory's smirk across the candlelit table, Lydia's pearls glimmering against her throat, Lucy's frightened eyes darting between us. Betrayal, once hidden, had been dragged into the light. By dawn, the city was waking. The hum of traffic rose like a tide beneath the penthouse windows. I sat at my desk surrounded by paperwork, insurance claims, utility bills, grocery receipts. They were more than paper. They were testimony. Each one said, in black and white, what I had given. And yet, to Gregory, none of it counted. I reached for the bank statements I had uncovered the night before. The numbers stared back at me, smug and undeniable. $4,000 in July, $5,000 by August, nearly $7,000 by December. While I ate instant noodles 3 nights a week to cover medical copays, Gregory was building a nest egg. Beside the statements lay the glossy brochure, a picture of a sleek wake boat cutting across blue water. His handwriting was scrawled along the margins: deposit $5,500. Scheduled delivery after holidays. Underlined twice. The timing was no accident. He had planned to cast me out only once I had paid December's bills. It was Lucy who gave me the final pieces. She slipped into my room mid-morning, her hair tangled from a sleepless night. She carried a phone in her hand, the glow of a group chat still open on the screen. "They've been planning this for weeks," she whispered. "Listen." I read the messages. Each one, a dagger. Gregory writing to Lydia, "Wait until the utilities clear. Then storage room opens." Lydia replying with a laughing emoji. Another message, she thinks she's buying her place here. Foolish. My pulse hammered. They had turned me into a punchline in my own family's group chat. Lucy hesitated before telling me the rest. Those doctor visits. Mom wasn't sick. Last week. She came home with her lips swollen. Said the doctor told her not to use a straw. It wasn't a checkup. It was fillers. On your insurance. I leaned back. Stunned. I had been rationing my lunches. Calculating whether I could stretch gas money another week. While my mother used my coverage for cosmetic injections. The betrayal was layered: financial, emotional, ethical. I pulled up my bank app on my phone. The balance stared at me, $712.18. 3 months earlier, it had been over $9,000. Each bill, each transfer, each payment on their behalf had bled me dry. Lucy's voice cracked. Dad said if you try to take anything with you, he'll report it as theft. Even the stuff you bought. My gaze drifted around the room, the desk I purchased during the pandemic to work remotely. The bookshelf I assembled with my own hands. The bedspread bought with my first paycheck. Evidence of my contributions. All under threat of being recast as stolen property. But I was not powerless. Under the bed, I kept a shoebox neatly stacked receipts. Stapled to credit card statements. Dated and filed. Proof that the furniture. The laptop for Lucy's schoolwork. Even the refrigerator downstairs. Hermina. If Gregory wanted a fight, I would not come empty-handed. I told Lucy. If I'd stayed 1 more month, I'd have nothing left. They wanted me to drain every last cent. She bit her lip. Her eyes glassy. I should have warned you sooner. But Dad said anyone who told you would be next. I wanted to be angry with her. But fear is a powerful leash. She was still a child in a house run by manipulation. I placed a hand on her shoulder. You're braver than you know. Telling me now. That afternoon, I sat on the floor with papers spread like a courtroom exhibit. Bills in my name. Grocery receipts. Insurance statements. Even the emails confirming autopay accounts. I organized them by category. Sliding them into plastic sleeves. It was methodical. Almost calming. Each page a brick in the wall I was building between myself and them. I paused only when my phone buzzed with a notification. A new message from an Aunt Gregory says, you walked out and left them high and dry. Is it true? Already. The story was spreading. Already. They were painting me as the villain. I stared at the suitcase against the wall. Then at the shoebox of receipts. My departure would not be a quiet one. They wanted me gone. But I would not go erased. Osh evening fell. I placed the documents into a leather folder. Zipped my suitcase. And set it by the door. Tomorrow. I would leave. Not just with my clothes. But with evidence. Not just as the child they cast out. But as the witness to their betrayal. For the first time in months. I felt the faintest stir of power. Morning came blue and brittle. The kind of winter light that makes a city honest. I brewed coffee strong enough to stand a spoon in it. Then, set the mug beside my leather folder, the one now swollen with bills. Receipts. And printouts. Paper has a way of telling the truth. Ink does not blush. I began with the living accounts. I opened my laptop and worked down a checklist I had scrawled on a yellow pad sometime around 3 in the morning. First. The electric service I logged in. Disabled autopay. Removed my card. And downloaded the final statement with my name printed in a font that suddenly felt like a small shield. Next. Water and gas, same ritual. The internet account took longer. Somewhere, in the labyrinth of settings, was a tab labeled Responsible Party. I clicked it. Screenshotted my name for the record. Then submitted a formal request to terminate service at month's end. When the screen flashed a confirmation number, I wrote it twice, once on the yellow pad. Once on a note card I slid into the folder, because when you are dealing with people who bend stories, you learn to straighten your own with numbers. Insurance came after breakfast. I phoned the provider and asked to revoke any informal permissions on my file. The representative was kind. Or perhaps only well-trained. Either way. The result was the same. She added a note that any change to my plan required my in-person verification with government identification. I could hear the clack of her keyboard like a metronome. A small click in my chest loosened. Lucy hovered in the doorway while I worked. Arms folded tight around herself. "They're in the family chat again," she said, eyes flicking to the phone in her hand. "He's telling everyone you stormed out after insulting them. Take screenshots. Email them to me." I replied, softer than my words read on paper. "Then mute the conversation and have some breakfast." She nodded and disappeared down the hall. A few minutes later, my inbox chimed images of Gregory's declarations sent to a chorus of relatives who always seemed to awaken perfectly on time for a pylon. There it was in plain text. "She's been freeloading for months and left us to drown." I pinned the screenshots into a digital folder named Evidence, then copied them to a small silver flash drive. By mid-morning, I was at the neighborhood credit union, where the tellers still called regulars by name. The building had the kind of honest carpet that never pretended to be anything more than thread and patience. I sat with a banker whose tie carried the faintest pattern of pine trees. "I need a new account," I said. "Just me. New routing. New everything." He slid the forms across the desk and asked a few routine questions. When I was done, he handed me a temporary card and a pamphlet on fraud alerts. "You'd be surprised how often it's family," he murmured, then seemed to realize he had said it out loud, and cleared his throat. I smiled without humor. I would not be surprised. Back at the penthouse, I moved with method. I transferred what remained in my old checking $712.18 into the new account. Then, closed the old one entirely. The app displayed a small, clean zero, like a square of snow after the plow passes. I set a credit freeze with the bureaus, requested a new phone plan PIN, and swapped my passwords for long strings of nonsense that only I would recognize. When I finished, I printed the confirmations and slid them into plastic sleeves, each one labeled in tidy blue ink. Packing came next. There is an art to it if you have had to start over before. I have. Clothes first, what I needed for 2 weeks. Rolled tight. Then documents. Both original and copy's birth certificate. Title to the car. Registration. Passport. I photographed each and placed the images on the flash drive with the group chat screenshots. Jewelry was easy, I owned little of it and wanted less. Books were harder, they always are. I chose 3. A small mercy to carry into a new room. I was lifting the second suitcase when the front door opened and the sound of Lydia's heels stitched across the foyer. She paused in the doorway to my room, and watched me pack with the mild curiosity of a neighbor glancing at curbside furniture. "Going already?" she asked, as if we were discussing the weather. "It seems the sooner the better," I said. She toyed with the strand of pearls at her throat. "Well? Do remember to leave the spare keys on the console. And the Wi-Fi login." "I've already removed my name from the account," I replied. "You'll need to set up your own service." Her mouth pinched. "You always were dramatic." There was a great many things I could have said then. But sometimes silence is the last bit of dignity you can afford. I zipped the suitcase and rolled it past her. The tree lights blinked with stubborn cheerfulness as I carried boxes to the elevator. Maya and Theo met me at the curb in Theo's dented hatchback. They were friends from the kind of days that test a person's warranty. The sort who come with bungee cords and snacks. Their golden retriever, Baxter. I stuck his head out the window and looked at me like I was both a long-lost sailor and a chew toy. "You brought everything?" Maya asked, pulling me into a hug. "Everything I'm taking," I said. "The rest I can prove is mine with receipts if it comes to that." "Then it won't come to that," Theo said, in the plain voice of a man who tightens bolts for a living and believes in the physics of facts. We loaded my life in 4 trips. Baxter supervised, offering his ball like a notary's stamp after each box. When the hatchback thunked shut, I looked up at the penthouse windows one last time. Lucy was a small figure behind the glass, one palm pressed to it like a child watching a ship depart. I lifted my hand. She did the same. Maya's apartment smelled like coffee, lemon cleaner, and the faint dog that clings to every honest home. They had made up the couch with clean sheets and put a vase of grocery store flowers on the end table. It looked more like a landing than a stop. I set my folder on the coffee table. The leather creaked like a tired saddle. First things first, Maya said. Practical as ever. She opened her laptop and tapped the keys the way nurses tap veins. We set up mail forwarding. Change your email, recovery addresses, and put two-factor authentication on anything that breathes. We worked for an hour. When we finished, Theo handed me a small lockbox. For the car title and anything you don't want walking off. His tone made anything sound like anyone. I put the documents inside and felt something unclench. My phone buzzed again. An aunt. A cousin. A number I didn't recognize. Thread after thread of messages. All some variation of the same question curved like a hook. Why would you hurt your parents like this? I resisted the urge to reply. You cannot talk a person out of a story they enjoy telling. Instead, I wrote one message to one person, Lucy. I'm safe. I'm nearby. If you need me, call and say you're hungry. I'll come get you for a meal. No questions asked. She responded with a single heart and then, a minute later, a photo of a notebook page. At the top she had written, in her careful hand, things that are true. The first line read, a paid bill is not a promise of love. The second, screenshots are better than memories. Evening settled like a clean sheet. We ate simple food soup from a can dressed up with lemon and pepper, and watched Baxter arrange his toys in a neat row as if he too was inventorying his small life. After dishes, I opened the folder and reviewed my exhibits. Utilities check. Internet check. Insurance notes check. Group chat screenshots. Receipt copies. A list of serial numbers for my laptop and camera. Photos of the desk and bookshelf with store receipts beside them like captions. There is a sound a heart makes when it realizes it is not trapped. I heard it then. A keyet, hinge unsticking. I thought of Gregory's voice in that dining room. Of Lydia's pearls. Of Lucy's hand against the glass. I thought of the wakeboat brochure. And what kind of man underlines delivery dates more carefully than he reads a child's face? That night, in the half-dark glow of Maya's living room, I drafted a letter calm. Precise. Not for posting. Not even for sending. A letter to myself. Perhaps. I listed what I had done, and what I would do next: file a change of address, open a post office box, set alerts at the bank, call the building to report any disturbance, and speak to a police officer about a no trespass notice if necessary. I stopped short of the word lawyer. Though it sat at the edge of the page like a coin I might yet spend. Before sleep took me, I set my phone to do not disturb and placed the lockbox under the couch. Baxter circled his bed twice. Sighed. And collapsed with the relief of a creature who trusts the night. I stared at the ceiling and listened to the radiator ping its small iron lullaby. Leaving is not the same as losing. I reminded myself. Sometimes, it is the only honest arithmetic left. You subtract what hurts. You carry what matters. And in the quiet that follows, you let the sum define you. Outside, the city exhaled. Inside, I did too. Tomorrow would be for whatever came next. Tonight belonged to a person who had finally stepped away from the table and taken the ledger with them. The knock began as a polite rapping. But within seconds it grew into fists pounding against wood. Each thud echoed through the apartment like a judge's gavel. I had known this moment was coming. Ever since I cut their names from my accounts and moved my savings to the credit union. Gregory's rage had been brewing like a storm over water. Open this door right now, he bellowed. His voice a coarse roar that carried down the hallway. You think you can abandon family and walk away clean? I sat still on the couch. Folder of documents resting on my knees. Maya stood by the kitchen counter. Her face pale but calm. Theo rose halfway from his chair as if ready to plant himself between me and the door. Baxter, their golden retriever, barked once, then sat. Hackles raised but body alert. Even the dog knew this was different. Through the peephole I saw Gregory's face. Red and contorted. Spit gathering in the corners of his mouth. He looked like a man cornered by his own failures. And now I was his only target. The pounding grew louder. Wood splintered around the frame. My heart galloped. Yet my hands felt steady when I dialed the police. This is an attempted break-in. I told the dispatcher. The man is my stepfather. He is not welcome here. He is damaging the property. My voice surprised me flat. Measured. Factual. From across the hall. Mrs. Alvarez. An elderly woman who baked empanadas for the building. Peeked out. Sir. She called. Her voice trembling yet firm. I've already called security. Leave before you make it worse. Gregory swung his head toward her. Eyes wild. Mind your business. Old woman. This is between me and my daughter. Her door clicked shut. But not before I saw the flash of her phone camera. Proof was multiplying. A final kick cracked the doorframe. Then came the heavy steps of the building's guard. Followed by the clipped command of authority. Step away from the door. See ya. Gregory's voice dropped to a growl. She owes us. Every dime she spent. She owes. That car. Those bills ours by right. You have no right here. The guard answered. Police are en route. Move back. The wail of sirens cut through the city noise. Within minutes, 2 officers escorted Gregory down the hallway in handcuffs. Even then, he twisted back to shout. You're the one destroying this family. I did not flinch. I watched through the open doorway as neighbors gathered. Phones raised. Eyes wide. For years, he had controlled the narrative in private. Now the story had spilled into the public corridor. Captured in pixels and whispers. At the station, Officer Rodriguez asked if I wanted to press charges. The words hung in the air like a rope bridge. Part of me wanted to retreat. To let it end quietly. But then I pictured the bank statements he had hidden. The brochure for a wakeboat bought on my sacrifice. The group chat mocking me. The fear in Lucy's eyes. Yes. I said. I want to file for a restraining order as well. Rodriguez nodded. He slid forms across the desk. His pen tapping steadily, as he explained each section. I filled in dates. Times. Account numbers. Attaching photocopies of bills and screenshots. Each page felt like a brick laid in the wall I was building around myself. Back at Maya's apartment. I placed the police report inside my leather folder. It was growing thick now, utility confirmations. Insurance notes. Receipts with serial numbers. Affidavits of ownership. Proof enough to stand in any court. 2 nights later. Another blow landed. Lucy's text arrived just after midnight. Mom took your laptop and camera. Said they're collateral for what you owe. She pawned them at Parkway on 4th Street. Got $300 for both. I sat up straight. Anger boiling. Those devices were worth over $2,000. More than the money. They held years of work photographs. Drafts. Tax records. But I had the receipts. I had registered the serial numbers. I thumbed through my shoebox. Found the purchase slips. Clipped them to copies of my bank statements. Officer Patel at the precinct listened carefully. Her tone professional, but edged with sympathy. Pawning someone else's property is a criminal offense. She said. With your receipts and serials, we can reclaim the items and add theft to the charges. Walking out with her business card in my pocket. I felt the balance tilt further. For the first time. The law was not just a set of rules I had to obey. It was a shield angled toward me. The next morning my phone rang. Lydia's voice came through. Thin and trembling. But rehearsed. If you drop that ridiculous theft report, you can come back home. Your room is still exactly as you left it. We'll let you stay. I said nothing. She filled the silence. And Gregory and I are worried about your state of mind. Maybe all these accusations are a breakdown. Family will understand that better than these stories you're telling. The threat was clear, drop the charges or be branded unstable. I drew a slow breath. I have copies of every bill I paid these past 6 months. I said. I have bank statements showing transfers into your account. I have messages about medical procedures you disguised as checkups. Would you like me to present all of it as evidence? The silence that followed told me everything. 3 days later, Officer Patel walked beside me into the townhouse I had once called home. Neighbors peered through curtains as the squad car idled in the driveway. Inside, Lydia tried for a smile that faltered under Patel's steady gaze. I went room by room. Boxing what was mine. Presenting receipts as proof. At one point, Lydia hissed, "That furniture belongs to the family." I held up a stapled receipt and photo. Bought with my card. Delivered to this address. Registered warranty in my name. Patel glanced from the paper to my mother's face. "She takes it," the officer said flatly. Through the window, I saw neighbors watching openly now. No longer pretending. Let them see the story unspool. When I stepped outside with the last box, Gregory pulled into the drive in my car. He jingled the spare keys he had kept, smiling like a man who believed victory was within reach. "We need to talk about what you owe us, before you take this too," he said, hand heavy on the roof of the vehicle. I reached into my folder, pulled free the title and registration, both stamped with my name. "This is mine. Legally and absolutely." Patel extended her hand. "Keys. See." Gregory's face drained of color. His grip faltered. Slowly, the keys dropped into her palm with a faint metallic clink. I slid behind the wheel. Engine humming beneath me. Neighbors' eyes upon us. For the first time in years, Gregory looked small. "Come near me or my property again," I said through the open window, my voice calm. "And I will see you in court." Then I drove away. The street stretching ahead like a ledger, finely balanced. News travels fast in families, but it spreads like wildfire when it leaks into the wider world. Gregory's outburst in the hallway, his fists hammering at Maya's door, had not only been witnessed by half the neighbors, someone had filmed it. Within a day, the clip appeared in the building's community group online. By evening, it had been reposted on local forums, and tagged with words like "unhinged" and "entitled father." Comments piled up, strangers dissecting every shout, every pound of his fists. For years, he had held the narrative tightly, whispering his version of events into the ears of relatives, painting me as ungrateful, irresponsible, unstable. Now, for the first time, people outside the family saw a different story. The proof wasn't my word against his, it was video. The next blow came not from Gregory but from Lydia. She sent a text that might have been comical. "Had it not been so cruel, I had to pawn your laptop and camera to cover the electric bill you abandoned. Parkway Pawn gave me $300. You owe me." I read it twice, then showed it to Maya. She shook her head in disbelief. "She just confessed to theft in writing," she said. "Save it. That's evidence." And so I did. I tucked the screenshot beside the receipts, the serial numbers, the officer's business card. When Officer Patel later confirmed the pawn shop had surrendered the items to police custody, I felt the strange satisfaction of watching pieces of my life click back into place. But the fight was not only about possessions. It was about dignity. Gregory and Lydia had always relied on secrecy, on cousins and uncles repeating their version without question. I decided that secrecy would end. With Patel's guidance, I drafted a demand letter, formal, notarized, crisp as winter air. It laid out each payment I had made over 6 months' mortgage supplements, utilities, medical insurance, groceries. It listed the theft report, the attempted break-in, the restraining order. It concluded with a warning further harassment or defamation would result in civil action. The letter was sent not just to them, but by design to every relative who had been looped into their smear campaign. Email chains can be weapons, too. The replies trickled in within hours. Some cousins offered shocked apologies. An uncle admitted he had never known I had been footing the bills. Even Aunt Phyllis, who had hosted the so-called family meeting to discuss my behavior, called with a voice soft as cloth. "I didn't know, dear," she said. "I didn't realize how much you were carrying." I did not soften. "You didn't ask," I replied. "And now you do know." The online clip gained momentum. Local news picked it up under the headline, "Man arrested after holiday family dispute turns violent." They blurred my face. But Gregory's profile was clear enough. Lydia's name appeared in the police report tied to the pawnshop theft. Together, the image of them shifted, no longer the respectable couple, holding their household together, but a pair unraveling in public. The consequences were quick. Gregory's employer placed him on leave, citing concern for professional conduct. The escrow on the wake boat was cancelled when the dealership learned funds might be tied up in legal disputes. Their mortgage company, already nervous from missed payments, issued a notice of default. The townhouse that had been my prison was now theirs to lose. Meanwhile, I rebuilt. Slowly, deliberately. Maya's spare couch became less a refuge and more a headquarters. I searched job boards, sent applications, scheduled interviews. At night, I worked through spreadsheets, income versus expenses, building the fragile scaffolding of independence. The bank account that had once dwindled now began to refill. Coin by coin. Lucy kept me updated. They're furious, she whispered on the phone. Mom says you ruined their reputation. Dad says you'll come crawling back. Tell him I won't, I said. Tell him the only crawling I'll do is over a lawyer's threshold if they try again. She laughed quietly, though it was the laugh of someone caught between fear and relief. The final stroke of public exposure came from a neighbor, Mrs. Alvarez, the same woman who had filmed Gregory at the door. She attended a church where Lydia often bragged about her dutiful child who paid the bills. After the video spread, Alvarez stood during a church luncheon and spoke plainly. That young one wasn't freeloading. They were supporting the household, while being mocked. Stories change when told in daylight. Lydia stopped attending. Gregory avoided the neighborhood entirely. Their circle shrank as truth filled the gaps where rumor had thrived. One evening, Theo returned from work with a grin and dropped an envelope on the coffee table. Inside was a printout of a local forum thread. The top comment read, "To whoever that kid is, if you're reading this, you did right. Family doesn't mean servitude." Hundreds of likes trailed beneath it. I sat back, the folder of evidence heavy at my side. Revenge had not come as a dramatic showdown or a shouted confession. It had come as light, steady and relentless, peeling back lies until nothing remained but their own actions on display. For the first time in months, I slept without waking to check the locks. 3 months after the confrontation, I signed the lease on a small apartment tucked into a quiet street where the sidewalks were shaded by old maples. The building was nothing like the penthouse I had left behind. Its walls were thinner, the kitchen smaller. The floors creaked when the heat came on. But it was mine. The light switches clicked to my touch. The bills came in my name. And no one could call me a leech while standing in rooms I had paid for. I painted one wall of the living room a deep teal, just because I could. Neighbors stopped by with casserole dishes, introducing themselves without suspicion. In the evenings I sat by the window with a book, listening to the hum of traffic below. For the first time in years, the quiet felt like peace rather than punishment. My bank account, once whittled down to $712, began to climb. By summer, I had built 2 months of savings. By fall, 3. I set a goal of 6 months. And each time the balance grew. I printed the statement and slid it into a binder labeled Future. There is a particular kind of satisfaction in watching numbers rise when for so long they only fell. Lucy thrived too. With my help, she filled out scholarship applications, navigated the financial aid system, and secured housing at a nearby university. On moving day, she hugged me tighter than she ever had. "You taught me more about survival than any class will," she whispered. We carried boxes into her dorm, laughing when we realized she had packed 3 kettles but no towels. She calls often. Sometimes, just to talk about a paper or a new friend. Sometimes, though, her voice drops. "They blame me now," she admits. "Mom says I betrayed her by siding with you." Dad barely looks at me. I tell her what I wish someone had told me years ago, that love is not proven by endurance of abuse, and that loyalty is not owed to those who trade it for control. As for Gregory and Lydia, the spiral continued. The mortgage default turned into foreclosure. The townhouse was sold off. They drifted to a relative's spare room, then another's, each stay shorter than the last. Gregory lost his job permanently. His reputation tainted by the video. Lydia clung to the idea that she was wronged. But fewer people listened. Occasionally, an envelope arrives at my mailbox. Postmarked from yet another address. Inside are letters written in Lydia's slanted hand. Some plead. Some scold. Some threaten. I do not open them anymore. They sit on a shelf. 5 or 6 thick. Each one sealed. Boundaries are not walls built in anger. They are fences built in recognition of where one ends and another begins. The first holiday in my new apartment was quiet. Maya and Theo came with Baxter, who still believed his ball was a universal cure. Lucy joined us, bringing cookies baked in her dorm kitchen. We crowded around my thrifted table. Mismatched chairs pulled close. The meal was simple roast chicken, potatoes, pie from the corner bakery, but laughter filled the gaps that silence used to claim. At one point Lucy raised her glass. To chosen family, she said, cheeks glowing. And to building something better. We clinked glasses. I thought of the Christmas dinner a year earlier, when Gregory's words had cut the air like a blade. I thought of the humiliation. The group chat. The door splintering under his kicks. And I thought of now the teal wall. The binder labeled, Future. The warmth of people who stayed not because they had to, but because they wanted to. I will not pretend there are no scars. There are nights I wake at the sound of footsteps in the hall, half expecting fists on the door. There are days when Lucy's calls leave me heavy with worry for her still tangled ties. But scars are not chains. They are reminders of battles lived through. And of the skin that grew back stronger. Family, I have learned, is not blood alone. It is not an invoice or a tally of bills paid. It is earned through respect. Sustained through trust. Proven in the small acts of care that require no repayment. So I end where I began. With a question: if those who should have protected you betray that duty, and later ask to be welcomed back, what would you do? Would you open the door again? Or let it stay closed? I know my answer. Story 2. My name is Kevin. And I'm 27. Until 2 years ago, I clung to the hope that my family would wake up and stop treating me like the designated scapegoat. But hope doesn't change people. They often dig in their heels. When they do, you've got 2 choices: keep hoping, or remember who you really are. I was the eldest of 3 me. Rachel, the golden child, and Eric, the baby brother who was too young to matter in our family's power plays. From the outside, we looked like any normal siblings, smiling in holiday photos, trading polite comments on Facebook. Behind the scenes, though, I was the one cleaning up every mess. When Rachel totaled her car in college, I emptied my savings to help her hush it up so she wouldn't lose her internship. When Mom forgot to pay the electric bill 3 months in a row and blamed it on Eric's marathon gaming sessions, I covered the late fees, no thanks. Just a perfunctory nod. And that vague family duty line. I did it all, every favor. Every dollar. Every ounce of emotional labor, because I believed if I kept showing up, they'd eventually see me as more than an ATM and errand boy. That illusion exploded last November. On what should have been just another ordinary afternoon, Rachel had just announced her engagement to Brandon. And I realized I'd been invisible the entire time. We weren't close, but he always struck me as one of those harmlessly bland types. He wore both shoes to Thanksgiving and said things like killer spread. See, still, I was genuinely happy for her. I thought this might be the moment we all turned a corner. I texted her, congratulations, offered to help however I could, and even volunteered to handle their honeymoon costs as a wedding gift. She responded with a half-hearted checks, and I didn't think much of it. Then 2 weeks ago, I got a call from Mom while I was wrapping up work. I still don't know if she meant to let the venom in her voice slip through, or if she genuinely didn't care that I heard it. Don't even think about showing up to the wedding, she snapped before I could say hello. Rachel's finally going to have the perfect day she deserves. And we're not going to let you ruin it. I was quiet for a second, trying to figure out what she was talking about. I wasn't planning on making a speech or doing anything flashy. I was just going to show up. Clap at the right moments. Maybe hug a few people. Ruin it, how? I asked slowly. Her voice dropped into that sickly sweet tone she always used when she wanted to disguise something cruel. Kevin, You've never exactly looked the part. You know that. Right. You always dress like you're going to a job interview and not a good one. And the way you hover around. It's off-putting. Rachel doesn't want you in the photos. She asked me to tell you. And frankly, I agree. I couldn't breathe for a second. It felt like my ears were ringing. All the years I'd bent over backward for them. All the effort to be supportive. And now I was being told I didn't even deserve a seat at the wedding. That I'd somehow ruined their perfect little family image by simply existing in the background. I could hear Rachel's voice in the background to light. Dismissive. Laughing like this whole thing was some kind of inside joke. Tell him he can send a gift though. She called out. He's still good for that. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't yell or defend myself. I just smiled. It was the same smile I used to give my boss when he tried to dump his work on me. The one that says you have no idea what I'm about to do. Sure. I said. My tone light. I understand. She hung up without another word. I opened my laptop. Logged into the joint account I'd set up for the honeymoon gift. And reversed the transfer $4. $200 back into my pocket in 5 seconds. I took a screenshot of the reversal and texted it to Mom with a simple caption. I wouldn't want to ruin anything. No reply. But I know she saw it. She always reads messages obsessively. Now, here's the part they really don't know. Last year, I quietly invested in a chain of mid-tier venues that were struggling post-pandemic. One of them happened to be the exact location Rachel bragged about booking on Instagram. Lakeview Ridge. The one with the big white gazebo and overpriced brunch menu. The moment I recognized it in her post, I double-checked my emails. Yep. It was under our portfolio. Not only did I partially own it, I had final sign-off power on all large events held there. Including, say, weddings. At first, I considered pulling the plug immediately. Just canceling the booking. Watching them scramble. But that felt too easy. Too quick. They wouldn't feel it. They wouldn't understand it. I wanted them to stew in their own smugness a little longer. I wanted them to post their countdown stories. Their dress fittings. Their seating chart arguments. I wanted them to laugh behind my back just a few more times. So instead, I've been watching. Patiently waiting. I made a few quiet calls to the event coordinator at Lakeview Ridge, asking to be notified if there were any concerns or issues with the Carsons' wedding reservation. I reviewed the contract and let me tell you, it's airtight. Except for one tiny clause buried deep in the fine print. Full payment is required 10 days before the event or the booking is considered forfeited. Not delayed. Not postponed. Forfeited. The wedding is in 12 days. And as of this morning, no final payment has been submitted. I didn't need to do anything yet. Just wait. Watch. Let them keep treating me like a footnote. Like a burden. They'd rather crop out of the pictures. Let them keep smiling for the camera. Completely unaware that the floor they're standing on was laid by the one person they deemed unworthy of standing beside them. It was amazing how quickly people forgot where their money came from. Once it was no longer being handed to them in silence. I hadn't heard a single word from Rachel or my mom since that phone call. Not even a half-hearted. Maybe you could come to the rehearsal dinner as a peace offering. Nothing. Just silence and smugness. But that's the thing about silence. It lets you hear everything they don't say out loud. I spent the next few days doing something I hadn't done in a long time. Living my life without them. I hit the gym again. Cleaned up my apartment. Took myself out to dinner for once. My phone wasn't blowing up with requests for favors or emergency money transfers. It was peaceful. Quiet in the kind of way that feels earned. Like the calm before a controlled storm. But then, 5 days before the wedding, I got a notification from the venue's coordinator. Amy. She's been with Lakeview Ridge for years and has seen more family meltdowns than a therapist. She's sharp. Composed. And a little too observant for her own good. Her message was short and polite. But the subtext was crystal clear. Hey. Kevin. Just checking in. The Carson party still hasn't submitted the final payment. I've sent 2 reminders with no reply. Let me know how you want to handle it. Since it's close to the deadline, I called her back that afternoon, and we talked through it. I kept my tone casual. Professional. If it's not paid by the deadline, we'll consider the booking void per policy. Just follow the contract. Amy hesitated. You sure? I mean, they're really banking on this thing. They've got, like, 15 vendors scheduled, a whole live string quartet. And there's talk of releasing doves during the vows. I smiled faintly. Doves. Classy. She laughed quietly. Okay. I'll follow protocol deadlines in 2 days. Now. I could have warned them. I could have texted Rachel a simple, hey. Just so you know, your payment's late. But I didn't. Because they made it clear I wasn't family. Not important enough to stand in a photo. Not important enough to warrant a chair. Just a walking wallet with a pulse. And that's when I decided I wasn't going to interfere. I was going to let the natural consequences of their carelessness do all the work for me. On the morning of the deadline, I took the day off work and treated myself to a good breakfast. Eggs. Coffee. Extra crispy bacon. I checked my email around noon. Still, nothing. No payment. No message. No Hail Mary. Oh my God. We forgot. Just radio silence. That night, Amy marked the booking as cancelled in our system. At 7:18 p.m. I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. 30 seconds later, another call. Same number. I finally picked up. Hi. Is this Kevin? This is Teresa. I'm Rachel's wedding planner. I nearly laughed. Of course, it was. Yes. I said, keeping my voice neutral. So, we're just trying to sort out a minor issue with the venue. I understand there was some kind of system error, and the final payment didn't go through. Probably a glitch with our account. But we were hoping to confirm everything is still on track for Saturday. I leaned back in my chair. Glanced at the ceiling. No system error. The payment deadline passed last night. The booking has been released. Silence. I could hear her breathing, and in the background, the muffled sound of someone arguing. Then her voice returned. Thin and nervous. But surely you can make an exception. Right? I mean, this is a once-in-a-lifetime event. The bride's already got her gown. Guests are flying in. Teresa. I interrupted gently. I understand. But the contract is the contract. If they wanted it locked in, they should have paid on time. We've been more than generous with reminders. She stammered a bit before trailing off with a shaky, I'll talk to Rachel. The next call came less than an hour later. This time it was Mom. Kevin, she barked. No greeting. What is going on with the venue? Rachel is in tears. They said the booking was cancelled because of you. I raised an eyebrow. Me, I didn't cancel anything. The deadline passed. I just happened to know the coordinator. You knew, and you didn't say anything. You let this happen. I let what happened. You mean I didn't step in and cover for your mistake again? There was a bit of silence. Then her voice turned cold. Do you really hate your sister that much? No. I said slowly. Clearly. I just finally decided to stop letting you all treat me like I'm disposable. You said I'd ruin the photos. So I took myself out of the picture. You always have to make it about you. She spat. No. I said again. Quieter this time. You did. You made it about me the second you decided I wasn't worth a chair at your perfect wedding. I'm just following your lead. She hung up without another word that night. I got a text from Rachel. No greeting. No emoji. Just this. You seriously couldn't have warned us. And then a second later. Wow. You're a bitter little man. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Because the next part that was entirely in my hands. Now the venue was gone. Their dream wedding had no foundation. Vendors were pulling out. Dozens were staying caged. And they still had no idea just how deep this rabbit hole went. Because while they were scrambling to find a last-minute location, I was sitting on a little secret. They thought the worst had already happened. They didn't realize that I wasn't done yet. Not even close. The following morning, I woke up to a dozen new texts and 3 missed calls. 2 from Rachel. 1 from Brandon. The texts ranged from thinly veiled guilt trips. This is still family. Kevin. No matter what happened to flat-out insults. I can't believe you're so petty. You'd sabotage your own sister's wedding. I read them all over coffee. Scrolled through without reacting. They didn't know the half of it. See. Rachel and Brandon had spent the last year parading this wedding around like it was some royal event. Magazine-style engagement photos. A custom website with a countdown. A color palette with 4 shades of soft champagne. The venue wasn't just a pretty location. It was the entire brand. Lakeview Ridge was the backdrop in every one of their online posts. Their Pinterest board. Even the RSVP envelopes had a watercolor painting of a gazebo. It was a curated fantasy. And they built it on borrowed money and other people's generosity. Including mine. They hadn't told anyone I was paying for the honeymoon. They took the money. Smiled for Instagram. And acted like it was just something Brandon pulled out of thin air. The worst part, I was proud of them. I actually wanted them to have a beautiful start. But apparently the ugly brother didn't fit the theme. And now, with 4 days to go, the clock was ticking. They were scrambling to find a new venue. And I knew how that process looked from the inside. Nothing decent was available at that short notice. Especially not one that could accommodate the number of guests they were expecting. Even if they found a backup. Everything from their floral arrangements to their ceremony setup would have to be redone. And the real kicker. They bragged for months about the custom package they negotiated at Lakeview Ridge. What they didn't know was that the coordinator, Amy, gave them that rate because I told her to. I wanted to gift it without the awkwardness. Now that the booking was void, that rate was gone. If they did manage to rebook, it would cost them double if we let them back in at all. I got another call that afternoon. This time from Brandon. Hey. Kevin. Listen. I know there's been some tension. But I wanted to clear the air. Man to man. I said nothing. Letting him twist in the silence. He cleared his throat. Look. Rachel's been really upset this wedding. It means a lot to her. To both of us. I'm sure we can figure something out. Right. Like you have connections at the venue. You could pull a few strings to get us back in Brandon. I said calmly. Did you know I was the one paying for your honeymoon? He was quiet for a second. What, the honeymoon? The resort package you two posted about, the one with the villa and the private chef. That was me. Simeyuan. Lambe. I sent it 2 months ago. I know. I didn't know that. Of course you didn't. I said. Because your fiancé didn't want you to. She told me I'd ruin the photos. That she didn't want me there. So I took back the honeymoon. And now you're asking me to step in and rescue the wedding. Another pause. I imagined him sitting there, staring at the wall like a kid, realizing he hadn't done the homework. I'm not trying to take sides, he said. His voice keyed. But I don't think you understand how stressed Rachel is. This is her day. I almost laughed. Oh. I understand. I just don't care anymore. Click. 3 hours later. I got an email from Amy with the subject line update on Carson's. I opened it. In short, Rachel had called the venue sobbing. Claimed she was blindsided by the cancellation. That it was unfair and completely unethical. She demanded to speak to the owner directly. Amy asked if I wanted to respond personally. I told her. Not yet. Instead, I did something better. I logged into the venue's website backend and added a small update to their homepage. Please note Lakeview Ridge is proud to host a private corporate event on the 27th of April. No wedding bookings will be honored on this date. That was their wedding day. I didn't use their names. I didn't have to. Anyone looking for a last-minute rebooking would see it. Every other venue in the area would assume we were booked solid. I had just quietly turned off the lights on every backup plan they had that night. My app messaged me, and Claire texted. Hi. Sweetheart. Can we talk? Rachel is devastated. Your mom is beside herself. I stared at it for a while. I replied. She said I'd ruined her photos. I took that seriously. She left me on read. The next morning the group chat lit up. Not Mina. Theirs. My cousin forwarded me screenshots. My mom was furious. Blaming me. Blaming Amy. Blaming Mercury in retrograde. For all I know. She ranted about how this wasn't how family treated each other. How she'd bent over backwards to include me. Rachel chimed in with a gem. He's been jealous since high school. I always knew he'd find a way to make it about him jealous. That word hit like a slap and a punch wrapped in silk. Jealous of what? The curated spotlight. She lived under the endless stream of fake compliments and whispered betrayals. I had built everything I owned by working quietly while they posed for pictures. I gave without asking for credit. And now? Apparently. I was bitter for not letting them set me on fire one more time. So I made a choice. I forwarded everything to Amy and said, "You can respond now. Tell them the owner reviewed the situation and denied the rebooking her policy." Then I picked up the phone and made one more call. A friend of mine named Carter runs a high-end catering company downtown. He owed me a favor. I asked him for a little something for Saturday. Nothing big. Just a modest corporate luncheon. 10 people. Same day. Same time. Sama Fanu. He laughed. "You want me to book the place out on their wedding day, not just book it?" I said I want photos. Instagram. The works. Tag the venue. Hashtag the event. Make it look like the best catered celebration of the year. He was quiet for a second. Dumb? Kevin. You're really doing this? I smiled. They asked me not to show up to the wedding. So I won't. But that didn't mean I wouldn't leave my mark. Saturday arrived with the kind of weather brides pray for. Crisp air. Not a cloud in sight. Soft sunlight filtering through early spring leaves. The lake at Lakeview Ridge was still reflective like glass. And the white gazebo gleamed against a backdrop of budding cherry blossoms. It was perfect. Idyllic. And not at all what Rachel was expecting. I got up early that morning not because I needed to, but because I wanted to savor every minute. I took my time showering. Brewed the good coffee. Even ironed my shirt, not to wear just to feel a little sharper. Then I sat by the window. Phone in hand. Watching the chaos unfold in real time. The first post came from a distant cousin. Rachel's college roommate. A confused selfie in her car. "Is the venue closed? Just got here and no one's answering the gate. Please tell me I'm not the only one who didn't get a cancellation notice." I sip my coffee. Refresh the tag. More followed. Bridesmaids in full makeup. Standing outside the locked gate with their arms crossed. Groomsmen in rental tuxedos. Pacing beside parked cars. A flower girl asleep in someone's back seat. Her tiara sliding off. They hadn't told anyone. That was the part one hadn't expected. I figured Rachel or my mother would have done damage control. At least send out a mass text. But no. They were so convinced everything would work out. So sure. Someone. Me would swoop in to save them at the last second that they hadn't even warned their guests. Entitlement turned to paralysis. Then came the post that made me laugh out loud. Lakeview Ridge, hosting a beautiful lakeside luncheon for a special team today. Nothing like a little sun. Spring air. And great food to celebrate big wins. Hashtag, private event. Hashtag booked out. Hashtag corporate luxury. 3 long tables draped in white crystal glassware. Waiters in black vests. A champagne pyramid in the background. Barely visible but unmistakable was Rachel's custom floral arch. Now repurposed for our luncheon's dessert bar. The sign she had painted by an Etsy artist, "Forever starts here," was flipped and were lettered by Carter's team to say "Success starts here." I wish I could have seen her face around noon. I got a call from Amy. I picked up immediately. "Kevin," she said, barely containing a chuckle. "We have guests trying to climb the side gate." I laughed. "Please tell me that's a joke." "Nope. One of the groomsmen swears he knows someone inside." I told them the property is under private booking, and that security has been notified. "They bring the doves." "Oh. Yes. 2 handlers and a crate. They're sitting on the curb looking very confused." I chuckled again. Slower this time. "You've been amazing." "Amy. Really, I owe you big for this." "You don't owe me anything," she said. "This is the best Saturday shift I've had in years." At 2:41 p.m. The inevitable happened. My mom called. I let it ring. Then Rachel. Then Brandon. Then my aunt. I didn't answer a single one. Instead, I opened the group text. The one I was still silently in. Even though they'd stopped tagging me months ago and typed exactly 2 words. You're welcome. Then I left the chat. That night, I heard from Eric. My younger brother. The only one in the family who'd ever treated me like an actual person. He wasn't at the wedding. He called me the day after I pulled the honeymoon fund. Said if they're going to act like you don't exist. I'm not pretending they're saints. Stayed quiet. Respectful. But I could hear in his voice he'd had enough. 2. His message was short. Eric. I saw the posts. I don't even know what to say. But I'm proud of you. They needed to be humbled. I'll call tomorrow. And for once, I felt it. Not just pride. Not just relief. Closure. Because here's the thing. People like Rachel. Like my mother. They build their world on optics. On appearances. The seating charts. The dress fittings. The stories they'll tell over a drink in 5 years. What I gave them wasn't just a ruined wedding. It was a shattered illusion. No one would remember how stunning her dress was. They'd remember standing outside a locked venue in heels for 2 hours. They'd remember the doves that never flew. The brunch that was served to a corporate team while the wedding guests stood in the parking lot. The whispered questions. Why didn't they pay? Didn't they have help? And eventually someone would point out that maybe, just maybe, Rachel wasn't the victim. Maybe the brother she tried to erase had simply said enough. 2 days later, my mother showed up at my door. She didn't knock. She pounded. I waited a minute. Then opened it slowly. She looked exhausted. Her mascara had dried into the wrinkles beneath her eyes. Her blazer was wrinkled. Her posture hunched. But her tone still sharp. You think you proved something, she hissed. No. I said calmly. I know I did. You humiliated your sister. I looked at her for a long time. She humiliated me. You did too. For years. You just thought I'd keep taking it. That I'd always show up. Clean up and keep quiet. Not anymore. She stepped forward like she wanted to argue. Like she had a speech prepared. But I didn't give her the space. I bought the venue. I paid for the honeymoon. I supported this family when no one else did. And you erased me for optics. So this time you got erased. She stood there trembling. But she didn't say anything else. Finally, I added. You can tell Rachel I'm not angry. I'm free. That's a better gift than anything on a registry. And I shut the door. A month passed. Then, 2. I didn't hear from them. Eric and I grabbed dinner twice a week now. We talked about work. About life. Sometimes we even laughed about the great wedding disaster of the year. I'd gotten a few sly messages from people who had been at the event congratulating me without really saying what they were congratulating me for. And that was enough. I didn't need a parade. I didn't need a public moment. I had peace. I had power. And for the first time in years, I had a family that I chose. Not the one that tried to write me out of their perfect picture. So I took the frame and I burned it.